Hi, I'm Celine from Blue Calla Patterns and welcome to the first video for the Passion Flower Tote. The first thing I'm going to do is just show you the bag and show you the various parts of the bag. So it is a square base, so rectangle base actually, tote with a zippered closure. It follows a lot of the same techniques that I usually use in my patterns. It does have one exterior slip pocket with a magnetic snap closure, so that's what that looks like. And there's a piece of faux piping accent at the top edge of the pocket, and that is optional. And I made it optional because at this area here where you're sewing over the faux piping and the connector, it can get a little bit thick in that area. So if you're not sure if your machine will like it, you can just omit the faux piping. Then there's a lot of straps on the exterior of this bag. There's this accent strap here. There's 4 of those, 2 on each side. And then there's these connector straps where your handles or shoulder straps are attached. So I do say handle or shoulder strap because I give you the option in the pattern. Maybe you're not a fan of crossbody bags and you prefer shoulder bags, in which case you can just use the cutting instructions to do a shoulder strap length. I personally only use crossbody straps, but I do like the look of handles on my bag. So this here is the handle length, and I did add the crossbody strap, which I used 1.5-inch wide seatbelt webbing for. It's just a little bit of a time saver to use webbing instead of making them out of vinyl. So on the inside of the bag, it is a zippered closure with zipper panels, which is something that's pretty standard in my patterns. And there is a metal zipper end at the end of the zipper. And then inside the bag is 1 zipper pocket and then 3 slip pockets. So hopefully you can see those. Okay, and then on the bottom of the bag, there are purse feet. So that is the exterior of the bag. Another thing that I want to mention is that for the D-rings, you can either use 3/4 inch or 1-inch wide D-rings, depending on what you have in your stash. And you'll need to cut a different width of D-ring connector strap, which you will notice in the cutting chart. Okay, so I'm going to set this aside and then we'll go through all of the pieces. Now, of course, the first thing you're going to want to do is read through the entire pattern before you start. I know it's a tedious step, but sometimes there's little instructions or options that you're going to want to decide on before you start cutting out your pieces. Here are also the pattern pieces that you're going to need. So I've cut out a set. First, I'll show you my very well-loved pieces. Like I said, I've made several. So I'm just going to show you what those look like. So this piece here, the main body piece, there's 3 separate pieces that you need to tape together. So I'll show you what those are. So these are the 3 pieces. This one's at the top, this one's in the middle, and that one's at the bottom. So usually what I suggest doing is to allow your pieces to overlap a little bit instead of cutting all along the lines and then taping them together, because it'll make them a bit stronger and more durable where they are taped together. So you just align the dotted lines and make sure that you have matching symbols, and then you tape them together. And then I also like to add a little bit of tape on the back. And so that's how I tape all of my pieces together. So that piece I'll do the same thing and I'll tape it to the bottom here so that it ends up looking like this. Now for the bottom piece, Since you're going to be using the same pattern piece to cut two different things, you're going to print out two copies, cut out one of them along this inside dash line, and then the fold line, the solid fold line. And then the second piece you're going to cut out along the exterior solid line and then the fold line. And you're going to, if it's written on the pattern piece, what you're going to use them for. So the outside line, that's going to be for the bottom, and then the interior dash line, that's for your bottom firm interfacing. So I'm not going to go through and show you all of the pattern pieces. I just wanted to point out certain things that were important, certain details. I personally like to, only for the bottom piece really, but you can do this for any piece that you want. If you're not a fan of cutting on the fold, I actually will print out two copies. So for the bottom, in this case, I actually printed out 4 copies, and then I tape them together at the fold line. And just for things like Peltex, which is a little bit more stiff, it's not something that you can really fold and cut out on the fold. So in that case, I like to print out 2 copies and tape them together at the fold line, and then you can just use the whole thing to cut out your piece. And so I did that as well for the bottom, but the rest of the pieces I just cut out on the fold as instructed. Now if you look on page 2, there's the list of all the supplies that you'll need. So you're going to need 2 exterior fabrics. Your main exterior fabric, which is, I'm going to show you on the bag, this one here, and then your exterior 2 fabric, which is your contrasting fabric, which can be cork vinyl, or if you're not comfortable using those, you can go ahead and use another coordinating fabric, and that will work fine. Keep the bag handy in case I need to show anything else on the bag. And then of course you're going to need a lining fabric, and that's going to be anywhere where you have basically all the interior parts of the bag, including the underside of the zipper panels and then the inside of your exterior slip pocket. The main part of the bag, the main part of the exterior is has fusible fleece. So first of all fabric pieces will have a fusible woven interfacing applied to the wrong side. And then in addition to that, to give the bag some structure, all of the exterior pieces have fusible fleece on top of the woven interfacing. And the other thing that you're going to need is some Peltex and preferably some foam interfacing. If you really don't have any foam interfacing, you can double up your Peltex or whatever. You're only going to be using the foam piece for the bottom of the bag here. So my preference is to use fusible fleece for this part and this part, the exterior pieces only. And I have a combination of Peltex and foam interfacing for this bottom piece. Now we're going to go through all of the hardware pieces that you're going to need. So you're going to need 4 1-inch wide rectangle rings. So you can just use the typical rectangle rings that are readily available at pretty much any online bag making store. I'm going to be using my twisted strap rings, which I have also used on this bag. You're going to need 1.5 inch rectangle slide. So that's this one here, still in its packaging, so hopefully you could see that. 2 1.5 inch wide swivels. So that's these, again, still in their packaging, so I'm hoping you can see them. 2 either 3/4 inch or 1 inch wide D-rings. So they come in a pack of 4, but this is what they look like. So you're going to need 2 of those. Then you're going to need some zippers, and I always use zipper tape because I sell it. So you're going to need one piece that is 11 inches long, and you have to use a number 4.5 or number 5. I only sell number 5 zipper tape, I should say. And then you're going to also need a 16-inch piece of zipper tape. So the 16-inch piece is going to be the main closure of your bag, and the 11-inch piece is going to be your interior zippered pocket. Now for your exterior pocket, you're going to need one 18mm magnetic snap. So that should come with the male part, the female part, and then a washer for each part. Now for if you're doing the crossbody strap, you're also going to need, well, I wrote 54 to 58 inches long. It's up to you, whatever you prefer as the length for your crossbody straps. And it's 1.5-inch wide webbing that you're going to need. So this is seatbelt webbing that I sell on my website. So this is what I'm going to be using. It's a huge time saver. One metal zipper end. So I have two in my package because sometimes the screw is not a good fit for the cap. I don't know why. So I always have an extra one just in case. And I think I did show you this on the zipper, but just in case you missed it, this is what that looks like. And then optional is purse feet. So I really do like adding purse feet. So I will be adding some to this bag. And then I always like to add a little metal handmade label to my bags. And that is it. In terms of all the typical things that you need: matching thread, the proper sewing machine needle. I always use, well, it depends. On my HD9, if I'm using thicker thread, I use a specific type of needle for my machine, but I usually use I believe a 9014. Otherwise, if I'm sewing with regular weight thread, I use a 9014, but I use a sharp. You'll also need some fabric glue, so I like to use fabric tack. And if you don't have that, you could use double-sided tape. I actually am going to use both fabric glue and double-sided tape in this video, so if you have both, that would be ideal. Now, if you turn to page 4 in your pattern, you'll see that I've included a cutting chart. Now, if you first want to study page 3, I've included some photographs of a bag. I've already gone through that with you, but this goes into more detail and it tells you what the name of the different parts are, so that when you're cutting, following the cutting chart, you can go back and refer to these pictures if you're not sure which fabric you want to use where, or where that's going to be on the bag itself. So if we go to the cutting chart, some of the pieces are not cut with pattern pieces. They're actually cut to dimensions. And some of the pieces you have a choice. You can either use the pattern piece or cut to dimensions. It's really whatever you prefer. I like to always do a combination of the two. So following the cutting chart, the first thing we cut out are the main body pieces. So that's the first line item in your cutting chart. So I have two exterior pieces. I'm going to be using this cotton linen blend. And I'm going to fuse a piece of fusible woven interfacing to the wrong side of both. And then I'm going to fuse my fleece. But before I fuse my fleece, what you want to do is actually cut out a small 1-inch by 1-inch square from the top corner here. And the reason why you want to do that is because it will make it less thick here when you're sewing a D-ring connector to this top, I guess this is the side seam. So it will just reduce some of the bulk there, especially if your machine isn't super powerful and you want to make sure that you don't have any issues. So it's 1-inch by 1-inch at all 4 corners of the fleece before you fuse it to the wrong side. So I'll put those away right for now. Now you're going to use the same main body pattern piece, and I'll take out my well-loved piece. So you'll see here it says lining cut line. So you're going to actually fold the pattern piece at that lining cut line. And then you're going to cut out 2 lining fabric pieces and 2 fusible woven interfacing. So I'll show you. So they look the same as the main body exterior, but they're slightly shorter. So I'm going to be using this cotton linen blend for my lining, the main lining of my bag, and then 2 fusible woven interfacing that I'm going to fuse to the wrong side. Next is the bottom. So I did show you that, and I have the 2 different pieces that I use to cut out all of those things. So with the bottom pattern piece, so that is the larger one at the with the solid line, I cut out 1 exterior 2. So I'm going to be using this this vinyl for my exterior 2 fabric. So anywhere you see that, this one, you'll know I'm using it. This is the exterior 2. And what I'm going to be adding to this is a piece of firm sew-in interfacing. So I'm using Peltex, and I cut this out using the bottom pattern piece that was cut at the interior dash line. And before we complete this video, I'm actually going to complete the interfacing and install my purse feet to the bottom. So I'm going to set this aside where it will be available for me in a few minutes. And then I also cut out a piece of foam interfacing, which I cut out really crooked for some reason, but I did cut that out using the larger bottom pattern piece. Okay, and I'm also going to need that for the next, before we complete this video. And then I have my bottom lining piece and a matching fusible woven interfacing piece. That one I will not need for this video. Next is the bottom firm interfacing. I've already mentioned that, and I've showed you what that looks like. The exterior pocket. So just a little thing that is important about this piece. So that's the pattern piece. I've included an arrow to show you if you're using a directional print that this will be the top edge here. So make sure that when you're cutting these pieces out that you're really paying attention if you're using a directional print. And actually, after you've interfaced it, what I do is on the wrong side, I'll use a fabric pen and I just do a little arrow like this so that I always remember during assembly that this will be the top edge of my exterior pocket. So this is my exterior pocket piece. So this is the top edge here. And then this will be the lining. And 2 fusible woven interfacing pieces, 1 for each piece. Now I'm going to, where I'm going to be installing the magnetic snap, and I'm also going to be putting my my metal label in the exterior piece for this pocket. We're going to do a little bit of extra reinforcement in those areas, but we'll cover that when we do the exterior assembly of the bag. Inner band. So the inner band is these 2 pieces here. Okay, so one important note for this is the inner band. If I can find those pieces. Here they are. Okay, so there's 2 of them. If you decide not to use cork or vinyl for these pieces, that's fine. You can use fabric if you like. My only suggestion, which I've mentioned in the cutting chart, is that you should cut out your fabric, fusible woven interfacing, and fuse that on the wrong side. And then I would also suggest that you cut out matching pieces of fusible fleece and fuse those to the wrong side as well. Again, you may want to cut out a little bit of the fleece at the top corners so that you don't have a lot of bulk here at the area of your D-ring connector strap. Zipper panel. So, and I'm going to put these together because when we do the assembly, we're going to be using these together. So these are my 2 exterior pieces, and I'm using vinyl for these. And then I have 2 lining pieces. So again, I'll just remind you what that looks like here. So there's the exterior and there's the lining for the zipper panel. So you're going to fuse the woven interfacing to the wrong side of the two lining pieces. And I'm using vinyl here, so I don't need any fusible woven interfacing to be added to those. So I'm going to keep these together because when we do the assembly, these all go together. Now we're going to start talking about lining pieces. And I do have to cover the strap pieces, but we're going to do that last. So for the lining pockets, for the zipper pocket, you're going to need a zipper facing piece, and that is cut to measurements, which is provided in the cutting chart. You're going to need a lining piece, so I cut out my facing in the same fabric as my main lining of my bag, and a matching piece of fusible woven interfacing, which is fused to the wrong side. And again, since these are going to be going together, I'm going to keep my 11-inch zipper with this piece and these two pieces. These are our zipper pocket pieces. So if you're looking at the bag, that's these two pieces here. And two pieces of lining fabric. I usually use a different lining fabric for my pockets, but you don't have to do that. You can use all the same fabric for yours, it's fine. And then two matching pieces of fusible woven interfacing, which will be fused to the wrong side of these two. So these are all going to stay together because they are for your interior zipper pocket. And then last is your slip pocket, and I purposely selected a directional print for this, just in case you do the same so you don't make a mistake and accidentally put your print upside down. So we're not going to cover it in this video, but when we do the lining assembly and we sew our slip pocket, I'll just give you a little tip at that time to make sure that you're placing your print right side up. One lining fabric and one fusible woven interfacing, and you fuse the woven interfacing to the wrong side of your lining fabric. So now we're going to talk about all of the different strap pieces that you need for this bag, and there are quite a few. So just to make it clear, these are called the accent straps. Okay, so they're just an accent. They don't actually serve a purpose except for a decorative purpose. So that's why I call them an accent strap. And then the connector straps. So these do have a function, and that is to hold our handles or shoulder straps and connect them to the bag. So for your accent straps, which are these ones here, sorry if I'm a bit repetitive, I just want to make sure no one is confused by all of these strap pieces. So to make it simple, the accent straps and the connector straps, I made you cut them in all the same size. So in total, there should be 8. And you cut them all to the dimensions mentioned in the cutting chart. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Okay, and so 4 of those are going to be accent straps, and 4 of those are going to be connector straps. Now, as I mentioned previously when I was showing you the bag, you can choose one of two options, either the short handle or the shoulder strap length. And as I mentioned previously, I really love handles, so I did the handle length. Now, I know it seems like it's really long, but we're going to make these using an endless loop method. So the final length is actually half of what you see there. So the short handle, you're cutting 40 inches long, but at the end, it's only going to be 20 inches. And the reason why I use this loop method for handles is because it just makes it less bulky than creating a 4-layer strap and then folding it around here. Most machines will not be able to sew through 8 layers of vinyl. So in this case here, when you're attaching it, you're just sewing through 4, which is much more manageable for most sewing machines. Here are my two D-ring connector pieces, and of course, because I'm using 3/4 inch D-rings, I'm going to be cutting them the narrower length. So if you're using 1-inch D-rings, make sure that you're cutting the right width. They are both the same length though. Here are my two handle pieces, like I mentioned. So I cut them according to the short handle length in the cutting chart. And oh yes, this is my faux piping piece. Confused myself. So that's this piece here. I am going to be doing the faux piping accent at the top of my exterior pocket. So that is this piece here. And the dimensions for that piece is actually, because it's optional, it's 11 inches by 1 1/4 inch. And that, sorry, I should have mentioned the step. The step is right after step 8. So between step 8 and 9, I mentioned the optional faux piping. So that's it for all the pieces that you need to cut. Before we end this video, we're going to put together our bottom. So you're going to need the foam interfacing, the exterior too, so your cork or vinyl, and your Peltex. And the first thing that we're going to do is we are going to glue the Peltex to the wrong side of the cork or vinyl piece. And I'm using Fabri-Tac. And I try to do like a thin layer of glue everywhere. Some corks or vinyls, they can be really sensitive if you're putting too much glue. So I really try to just do a very thin coat all over. So now I'm just going to guess what the center is and glue that like this. And now, before we put on the foam interfacing, we're going to install our purse feet. So I've actually used my hole punch. This is the hole punch I use for any holes that I make. And I punched out the holes where my purse feet marks are on my pattern piece. And I'm going to use those and make marks for the location of my purse feet. Now normally I like to let this dry a little bit before I start handling it because I don't want my Peltex to move, but for the sake of the video, I'm going ahead. Okay, so now you're going to, this is a package of 6, so I don't really need all 6. So you push them in, the prongs, through the right side towards the wrong side. Like this. Then you're going to take your washer. You should have a washer for each purse foot. And then I spread the prongs. So I'm going to do that for each one. And now, sometimes, if you don't have them on tight enough, they can get kind of snagged and be torn out. So make sure that they're really secure. And then also, now normally I put packing tape or something a bit stronger, but I just happen to have this on hand. Just helps them to be more secure. Okay, so now we're going to take the foam interfacing piece. Now, normally it depends on the situation and the bag. Normally what I would do is just have you put this on and then baste it to the wrong side of the bottom piece with a zigzag stitch. However, in this case, I don't want the foam coming out too far here. So we're actually going to trim the foam out of the seam allowance on both of the longer sides, because I find if the foam is too wide, if it's the same width, sometimes it can kind of, it just doesn't make things sit properly along this edge. So I'm probably just being extra cautious here, but I like a nice end result, so I'm going to play it safe. We're going to, so our seam allowance is 3/8 of an inch. So I'm going to trim, and I'm going to take this opportunity to straighten this horribly crooked line and trim away 3/8 of an inch along this side, and then this side. So in total, it's 3/4 of an inch. But as I said, I feel the need to straighten my horribly crooked cut edges. That's better. I'm going to put this out of the way. Now we're going to need our glue again, and we're going to glue this to the wrong side. And you're going to make sure that you're leaving that space on both of the longer edges here. I'm just going to, so I specifically want a lot of glue along the outer edges here so that it really stays in place. And I can actually use a bit more glue this time because I'm gluing foam to Peltex. And then along this edge, pretty much where I don't want it to come undone. And I'm definitely going to let this dry out properly before I do any kind of sewing with it. Okay, so I'm actually going to flip it this way. And see, it sticks out a bit here. I didn't cut it properly, so I'm going to trim that so it's the same. And I will put something heavy on this and allow it to dry completely. And that is the end of video 1. I'm actually going to fuse all of my woven interfacing and my fusible fleece to the wrong side of all the pieces that we just went through. And then we'll be ready to start the exterior assembly of our bag.